Everybody ready? Good morning, and thank you all for being here. I must admit, this is not really exactly what I was expecting to be talking about shortly after an election, but life is a journey, and this has been one. So I was recently invited to attend what is known as a side session of the Human Rights Council of the United Nations in Geneva, Switzerland, along with some other elected officials. Two of those elected officials were Holly Mitchell, who is an elected supervisor on the Board of Supervisors in Los Angeles. So that you understand what that means, Holly Mitchell's constituency is 2.4 million people in the city of Los Angeles, and it includes most of the people there who are immigrants. It also includes most of the people, or at least many, many of the people who are and have been so adversely affected by denials of SNAP benefits and other things that address their basic human rights. And also, we were joined by, remotely, but we were joined at length by Mayor Brandon Johnson of the city of Chicago, who obviously has some things to deal with in Chicago, and thus he was remote. There were several other people who participated in this session, and the entire session, which is a 90-minute session that was conducted inside the halls of the United Nations in Geneva, Switzerland, the entire session is actually available on YouTube. There is a link. We'll make the 90-minute session available to you. For those of you who don't have all day, I will tell you that Holly Mitchell's remarks come towards the earlier part of the presentation. They are excellent. They comprise 6 minutes. That my remarks come second to last being Mayor Johnson. Mine comprise about 10 minutes, and Mayor Johnson's remarks last about 15 minutes. Obviously, there are other things that are addressed in that session, and it was not the only session there, but for those of you who want to look at it a little more closely, I think it's worth taking that look. Standing up here with me, because this was and is and intends to be a human rights district attorney's office, a human rights state prosecutor's office. Standing up here with me are some of the people who will be involved in that process, and they include Brian Collins to my left. Brian Collins, along with Vinnie Corrigan, are well known to many of you for their successful work with the Special Investigations Unit, specifically in some instances going after public officials, to include police officers, when they commit crimes. We are also joined by Katie Ernst, who is here. Katie is the head of our law division. The law division comprises about 60 attorneys and handles all the constitutional analysis, legal analysis, brief writing, among many other things, on behalf of the office. We also have with us the unstoppable Pete Andrews. Pete Andrews is the chief of our federal habeas corpus unit, which is a part of the law division, but it is also worth noting that he previously served the United States government on the commission engaging in the largest criminal investigation in the history of the United States, which was, he was doing appellate work in relation to the January 6th prosecutions, you know, the ones that were all excused, pardoned, swept under the rug by the man who arguably was chief leader of that effort to overthrow the government of the United States. He is back with us, and that's a good thing. He left this office to go there, and he came back here when, well, let's just say circumstances changed. So I'm going to show you a short compilation of some of the comments of Mayor Johnson, Supervisor Mitchell, and also my comments. This is only about 3.5 minutes. I'll show you that, but I want to remind you that we will have the link for the entire event available with our press release when we conclude today. Shall we?
I think my colleagues who are in elected office sometimes forget who their bosses are. In a democracy, our bosses are people. In a democracy, our power comes from people, and those are the people of the United States of America, who are the only ones in a position to rein in a rogue president. I will say it because it needs to be said. A wannabe Adolf Hitler. The United Nations has moral authority. It has the ability to speak to the people in the United States.
Many of you have already raised concerns about the deployment of the National Guard in U.S. cities, the militarization of law enforcement, the abusive immigration crackdowns, and other serious setbacks in the protection of fundamental rights. We are here because the federal government under the Trump administration has failed to meet even the most basic expectations of transparency and accountability before this council. This refusal to engage in good faith with international mechanisms for accountability and oversight is a moral failure.
I represent the vast majority of immigrants in LA County, 10 million people who come from 140 countries, who speak over 225 languages, and they are afraid to leave home, to go to work. There have been raids in schools. There have been raids in every corner of the county. And so these actions clearly represent human rights violations of a magnitude that must be taken seriously by all of us, by you, by all of us. When the state of California has to file close to 50 lawsuits against our very own federal government in an effort to protect our residents' constitutional rights that are being violated every day, we have a problem of big proportion. And when the president sends tanks into the streets and disappears people, people are taken from home, off the street, from their families, from schools, without any rights, being held without access to counsel, I believe we're in trouble, and it's going to take the world's eye and the world's voice to hold him accountable.
Even though the United States at the moment is possessed of a troubling disease, the fever will break. It has broken before, it will break again. My oath, very specifically, is to seek justice. Justice is a moral notion, in addition to a legal one, and we are to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the United States, which of course connects us to international law.
These are not just abstract policy issues. They are the lived reality of our neighbors, and they are human rights violations. But I also come before you to share the work that is happening in resistance to these injustices. Because here in Chicago, we are taking concrete steps through executive orders, local policy reforms, and community organizing to ensure that our city protects all of our people. We cannot do this work alone, though. And that is why I call on this council to hold the federal government of the United States to the same standards of accountability you apply elsewhere in the world. No country should be above international law. Human rights are universal, or they are meaningless.
All right, as I said, that is a less than 4-minute compilation taken from 90, of which the elected officials I have identified occupied about 25 minutes. But I think there's value in there because I think you need to understand the context, not only the context of what came before this event, but also the context of what will be happening between now and December the 10th. What came before this invitation to these elected officials to go speak at the UN and present at the UN is that the President of the United States, for the first time in United States history, refused to participate in what is known as the UPR. The UPR stands for the Universal Periodic Review. This is something that the Human Rights Council of the UN does and has done for decades. It is an analysis every 4 to 5 years of every country that's involved in the United Nations for its observance and protection of human rights, as they have been explained, as they have been defined in international law. Some of these definitions, of course, relate to treaties that the United States has signed, that the United States Senate has in some instances ratified, but regardless, they relate to what has commonly been understood to be human rights since the United Nations was founded at the end of World War II in 1949. Well, maybe the president prefers some of the people who participated in World War II to some of the people who participated in the United Nations, because he has frankly disgraced this country by refusing to participate in hearing what it is they have to say about human rights in the United States. Almost no countries have ever done this, ever. Almost none. And even he, in his prior term, grudgingly, with much hostility, participated in the UPR. This is where we are right now. You have a president of the United States who doesn't even want to hear what it is that the United Nations has to say about people being disappeared in the United States, in Los Angeles, in Chicago. He doesn't even want to hear what the United Nations has to say about whether or not we are meeting the most basic needs of children in the United States. And so that was the factor precipitating the invitations going to various elected officials, one in the West, another one in the Midwest, another one in the East, to participate in this way. My lane, of course, is quite different than a mayor. It's quite different than someone who is on the Board of Supervisors in LA. My lane is legal. It has to do with criminal justice. It has to do with the protection of constitutional rights. But those rights connect to international law because the United States has participated in the UN, helped to found the UN. The UN, in fact, was founded at a conference in the United States, and the United States has signed on to and/or ratified a number of these treaties. If Donald Trump wants to turn away from his legal requirements under international law because he has no morals, and we all know he has no morals, if he wants to do that, that doesn't mean the rest of us who are in elected office need to do that. If he wants to make sure there is no actual accountability for people who commit federal crimes, so long as the people who commit those crimes are his friends, that doesn't mean we, who are in elected office at the state level, need to accept that. We have every right and every ability to step up and to say that we will be human rights prosecutors, that we will make sure that we are mindful of international standards of right and wrong, of international standards of human rights, and of international legal requirements as we act. That is one of the things that I am doing today. And I am inviting all other elected prosecutors who took an oath to seek justice, and yep, that's pretty much all of you, and all other elected prosecutors who took an oath to uphold the United States Constitution and the laws of the United States, and yep, that's pretty much all of you, to be mindful that the United States government has signed and ratified certain international treaties. And that if we are going to exist in a country where we have as president a wannabe dictator, and we all know that's what we have, who's already tried once to overthrow the government and is day by day trying to build towards overthrowing the government for good, if we are going to deal with that situation with a corrupted and undermined Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, which is what we have, then we do not need to despair. In fact, we should be encouraged, and we should accept this call to action to take the international voice for our constituents, the people who elected us, the 2.4 million in LA, the 1.6 million in Philadelphia, the 3+ million in Chicago itself, that we should be mindful of international standards of human rights, we should be protecting human rights, and that human rights are bigger than and inclusive of immigrant rights. Human rights as defined by the UN go well beyond that. It is and always has been a tactic of wannabe dictators to divide and conquer, to go after the most marginalized and destroy them, and then go after the next most marginalized and destroy them, and then go after the next most marginalized and destroy them. It is a theory of divide and conquer. A national push on the part of good faith prosecutors, I don't care from what party, I don't care what their politics are, a national push on their part could have a profound effect on how we are actually protecting our constituents, not only in these important American cities, but also nationally. This should be important to every Philadelphian because, frankly, given who Donald Trump targets day by day, we are all on the chopping block, except maybe a few of his rich allies who are helping him build ballrooms in the city of Philadelphia. We are all on the chopping block, and we all need to work together to make sure that the fever does break and we are able to restore our democracy when he is voted out of office. That, of course, means preserving the vote. So that we are clear then, a human rights prosecutor's office is one that protects immigrants. It's one that protects people who are black and people who are brown and people who are poor. It's one that protects children. It's one that protects people of faith who don't want their faith to be stepped on. It's one that protects victims and survivors of crimes, members of juries, criminal defendants, witnesses, police officers, anybody else who actually is trying to keep their obligations in an American democracy to follow the Constitution and the laws. That's what it is. I'm happy to say that we're not alone. Obviously, this is a federal system. It's one where there is not just a U.S. Supreme Court, there are also state Supreme Courts in every state. And those state Supreme Courts are interpreting their state constitutions that are often more protective of individuals than the United States Constitution is. And a lot of the things we do are beyond the reach of Donald Trump and his circle. They're beyond the reach. For example, he can't pardon a state court conviction, including his own. He can't pardon Derek Chauvin. You can talk all day long about it, but he can't, because Derek Chauvin had a conviction. He had two convictions, but he had a conviction in state court that cannot be disturbed. People should not despair. People should understand that this is one more tool in the toolkit. We're going to use everything we have in this democracy. We're going to remember who our bosses are, and our bosses are the people. They are not political insiders. They are not rich racists. Our bosses are the people. And we are going to use all that we have within the United States and outside of the United States to make sure that our democracy is preserved, that justice is done, and that we uphold the Constitution and the laws of the United States. Now, moving forward, there's a day coming. It is December 10th, 2025, less than a month from now. I am hopeful that International Human Rights Day is something that will have a special significance in a country where we have seen millions of people take to the street for No King's Day. I am hopeful that some of my elected colleagues who are chief prosecutors will be profiles in courage rather than profiles in cowardice. And I am hopeful that their constituents will notice and their constituents will reward and re-elect people who've kept their oath to uphold the law and Constitution of the United States and have, perhaps, joined a national voice saying that we are human rights prosecutors and we will not have you steamroll people's human rights. I will say this, any prosecutor who doesn't want to take that position might need to get voted out. And any prosecutor whose day-to-day decisions don't reflect that allegiance to their fundamental oath and that allegiance to human rights might want to get voted out. The people who will do that are their bosses, and their bosses are their constituents who vote and have very, very recently demonstrated all over the country, not only will they vote in extremely large numbers, that they will vote against what is being offered by this president who is in fact a wannabe dictator. All right. Having said that, we'll do a little Q&A here. Mr. Edmondson, ABC. No questions. All right, thank you. Max Marin, Philadelphia Inquirer. And I think, is Maggie Prosser here too? All right, so you both want to ask her? Maggie's got the show. All right.
Some concrete examples of what you're looking for from other prosecutors to uphold this human rights DA's office.
You know, the short answer, and as we go forward, we will give more specific answers, but the short answer is that many of these rights have been articulated in fundamental human rights documents since the late 1940s. And then they have been adjusted, confirmed, and reconfirmed in multiple treaties since then. But the general notion of human rights includes things like civil rights, political rights. It also includes people's basic needs being met, not having massive government-imposed starvation, not having massive government-imposed disease. It includes things like that. So it is a pretty sweeping confirmation of what I think we generally view as being moral, as being and being right. I certainly can point you to some of those specific documents, but we will be getting more specific. It's my hope that we can build a consensus among chief prosecutors around the country on certain things that we all agree are human rights. But it's a lot. It is, obviously what's happening to immigrants is horrific and is a foot in the door to take away the rights of everybody else in this country. But human rights are all of ours. They are not exclusively the rights of people who are undocumented in the United States.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
A lot of these unjust policies are coming from the federal government. How do you expect state prosecutors to then stand up to that authority?
Well, there are many ways. One way that you stand up is when you have federal agents, federal officers come into your jurisdiction and commit crimes under state law. You prosecute them, and you prosecute them without fear, and you prosecute them the way your bosses, the people who put you in office, would like you to prosecute them because they expect accountability. You know, the real hallmark of Donald Trump, more than anything else, is the desire to do whatever he wants without any accountability. And that, of course, is what we see with the UPR. He doesn't want a report card. He knows what the report card will say. These efforts at starving children, these efforts at destroying their health care, these efforts at disappearing people, these invasions by masked people who, in theory, are maybe ICE, or maybe they're other federal agents, or maybe they're mercenaries. How would we know? They're masked. They don't have badges. All of these things are butting up on fundamental individual rights and human rights. So I think that's where we're going to sit with that.
Are you looking then to prosecute some of these federal agents that are coming to Philadelphia?
I'm looking to prosecute people who commit crimes.
Have you looked into any of these?
I mean, as I'm sure that you may be aware, we have had, frankly, a remarkable and historic record, thanks in large part to these two, of taking that small number of police officers who commit crimes and holding them accountable. It is unprecedented in the history of the city. I see no reason why I would do less. If federal agents come to Philadelphia and they want to murder people, we've prosecuted homicides. We've had 3 successful prosecutions of homicides. They want to sexually assault or rape people. We have somebody who is a former homicide detective sitting in jail for 24.5 to 49 years as a result of a state court conviction that Donald Trump cannot pardon. And we have prosecuted now 2 different detectives. Well, that's not true. We've had 2 different cases in which we've prosecuted people for perjury. If federal agents come to Philly to commit crimes under state law, I have every intention, with my law enforcement partners, of having them arrested, having them prosecuted, having them face a Philadelphia jury, and having them face the consequences that jury determines are appropriate for what they are convicted of doing beyond a reasonable doubt. Yeah, there cannot be anyone in the society who is completely unaccountable and can run amok. So, as I've said many, many times in the past, and I'll say again, yes, we intend to prosecute federal agents who commit crimes.
At this point, do you have any evidence that has happened in Philadelphia or any cases you're looking to prosecute?
I have no comment on that at this time. Yes, sir.
On that note, Mr. Attorney, your office was yet to comment on the charging of 9 police officers last Friday while you were away on this trip. Do you care to elaborate on the case and why there's no public statement on it yet?
I'm not going to comment right here and right now, but I'm happy to talk to you a little bit afterwards. Maybe we could set up something so you can get more comment tomorrow, perhaps. All right? I'll talk to you after if you don't mind.
Yeah, I just wanted you to talk about the case.
I understand that, but that is not actually the topic of this event. I'll try to help you with that, but I'm not going to do it right here, right now. All right. Do you have anything else, Mr. Marin? All right. Sherry Stone, Philadelphia Tribune.
I'm wondering, what do you think can be done? Well, I don't want to talk about impeachment. Do you think that's, I put her on the spot, do you think that's, I think it was Congresswoman Maxine Waters, and a few others who are making kind of a pitch for this kind of concept. Do you think that's too much, maybe? Or do you want to decline?
Sherry, I heard most of that. You said too much of this concept. Are you speaking of impeachment, or what are you speaking?
Talk of impeachment, of an impeachment effort. It wasn't too successful his last time, and he's been elected again. Do you think that's too much?
I think that I am a realist. There have been attempts in the past that had a strong legal basis to try to rein in a rogue president, and they haven't worked. But the one thing that I know will rein in a rogue president is a massive loss in the midterms, because it would mean that some of these insane, destructive, anti-American things that he is trying to accomplish will not get passed by Congress. It won't stop him from trying to be the president king, but it will slow him down in very, very serious ways. And in my mind, the most important thing that's going to happen in the next year will be those midterm elections, because if the popular sentiment that we are seeing as of a couple of Tuesdays ago, if that is real, if phenomena like the election of a reform prosecutor attorney general in the state of Virginia, something not widely reported, frankly, because sometimes the media misses those stories, but if that doesn't tell the tale about where people are with all those other elections, then we have a real problem. There has to be a massive outpouring of people who are hopeful, who are ready to act, who will be called to act by voting. And to me, that is the most likely way that this president is going to be reined in and that our democracy is going to be preserved without, heaven forbid, civil war. All right. Mr. Horan, Philly FPV.
Yes, just two questions. As the district attorney, how do you propose that we handle the mass influx of undocumented immigrants that we see in major cities like Philadelphia and LA?
Well, I propose that we follow immigration laws that have been established over many decades. I propose that we do what the Constitution does, which is to observe the individual rights of immigrants. I am the grandson of immigrants. There's nothing strange about that. There's probably more than half of the city of Philadelphia who will tell you they're either immigrants, grandchildren of immigrants, or children of immigrants. Immigrants often move for really good reasons, like it's the only way for them to stay alive. So I suggest that what we do is follow the Constitution and laws of the United States, that we observe their basic human rights, and that we seek justice, which is exactly my oath.
And my follow-up to that is, what about the undocumented immigrants that are affecting people that were born here or have gone through the proper channels of immigration and making them victims in cities like this? Like, case in point, probably 2 years ago, somebody was hit in a hit and run, went through your system, and then the person, the undocumented immigrant, went through the court system and was found or pleaded guilty to hit and run, which is a felony, and then they only got house arrest.
So here are the facts. I mean, we can talk about anecdotes all day long, and we can provide some of the facts, but not all of them if we want. But here are the facts. The facts are that immigrants are only 40% as likely to commit crimes as U.S. citizens. And I'm not proposing that we deport all U.S. citizens, even if it would make us safer. Those are the facts. Yeah, immigrants do affect our lives. When I go to a restaurant and I get a beautifully prepared meal, and it's an Italian restaurant full of people who are immigrants that are not Italian, when that happens, that affects my life. When I need people to do certain kinds of labor that U.S. citizens are not crazy about doing, that positively affects my life. And when an immigrant commits a crime, they should be treated no better and no worse than a U.S. citizen, even though they're only 40% as likely to commit that crime as compared to U.S. citizens. You know, obviously, all countries have a right to try to have control over their borders. The United States has essentially always had that from the time, you know, that they started to more heavily regulate immigration. We have that right. But that's not what Donald Trump is doing. Donald Trump is doing the kind of immigration activity that Adolf Hitler did. It is a sweeping violation of our most basic morality and a sweeping violation of our most basic constitutional rights, almost all of which do apply to people who are immigrants, documented or undocumented. Do you have another question, sir, or was that it? No. That's it. All right. Thank you all very much. We appreciate you. And Max, I'll talk to you on the side for a second.